Hello. Thank you for joining us for this Volunteer Firefighter 2025 annual reporting presentation. My name is Christina Gauthier. I am Paris Outreach Bureau Chief. Today we are going to cover the two parts of Volunteer Fire annual reporting. First half, we will cover the paper reporting process. In the second half, we will cover the electronic reporting process. And at the very end, we'll cover some frequently asked questions. Before we get started, for both the paper and electronic reporting methods, it is important to understand that service credit eligibility for volunteer firefighters for the 2024 reporting season. A volunteer firefighter must attend 50% of all business meetings, fire drills, and emergency responses they were held accountable to attend by the department. And so, if you have a volunteer firefighter who is at their day job during an emergency response or is on personal or professional travel during any periods of business meetings or fire drills, trainings that are being held, you as the chief have the discretion to excuse them from those uh, essentially requirements. The state fire marshal's office strongly recommends that you document on your business meeting sign-in sheets anyone who is excused from attending that particular meeting. When you are recording training materials, if somebody is excused from attending a fire drill / training session, that should also be documented in your department records. When you are recording emergency responses, I know that gets challenging when you are in the throes of providing an emergency response, but it is going to be very helpful for you come annual reporting season to document anyone who may have been excused from attending that emergency response. Kicking off our conversation is our paper reporting process. There will be 5 forms total that you will need to utilize during the paper reporting process. For the first part of our discussion, we are going to cover the VF Annual Service Credit Qualification Record Form for new members. Anyone who is added to your roster for the first time in 2024 gets reflected on this form. On the top section, section 1, you will record your volunteer fire department name, your para-issued 5-digit VFD number, and the county under which you fall as a volunteer fire department. There are 10 spaces in section 2. If you onboarded more than 10 volunteers during 2024, you will want to use additional sheets. On each line, you will reflect one individual's full 9-digit social security number, their legal name, their mailing address, their date of birth, and you'll check yes or no in terms of whether or not they met service credit eligibility, as we discussed at the start of this presentation. If you did not add any new volunteer fire members to your roster during 2024, you do not have to complete this form, obviously. But if you are adding members in section 2, the chief or the chief's designee needs to sign, list their title and date, section 3, in order for para to be able to accept this form. In addition to listing the brand new volunteers on the service credit qualification form, each new volunteer has to complete a member enrollment form and provide a copy of their driver's license and social security card. I understand if you have volunteers coming to you from other states, it is perfectly acceptable to give us a copy of the driver's license from a different state. If your volunteers do not have their social security card, they can visit ssa.gov and request a duplicate social security card. The importance of these documents is to ensure that PARA's database contains only valid, accurate information. You would be personally appalled at the number of bad social security numbers that are fed into our database, and most of it is unintentional. But now that we use our social security numbers for reporting purposes for less and less, I think folks just don't have it committed to memory like those of us who were raised using that as an identifier have it committed to memory. And so it's imperative the social security, date of birth, and legal name are reflected on this form. Nicknames are not going to fly. Making up social security numbers certainly not going to fly. And so the member should be completing sections 1, if applicable, Section 2, and then signing and dating Section 3 in the month they join your department. The chief or the chief's designee needs to complete Section 4 in its entirety. The most important part of Section 4, in addition to the department information and chief's signature, is the start date. Our records division will reject this form back to us, which means we're going to reject it back to you if that start date is incomplete. Ironically, we accepted a form recently from a department where we were so honed in on the start date being included in Section 4 that we totally missed that the Social Security number was missing in Section 1. So the only one of these spaces or sections that is, not mandatory is Section 2. It's only mandatory if the member is married at the time they enroll in volunteer fire benefits with PARA. So please make sure your department members are completing the applicable sections from 1 through 3, and then the department completes Section 4. All right. Next item up for discussion is the service credit qualification current active non-retired member form. Today, just before this seminar started, we got a question about, do we report brand new members on the previous form and this form? And so the answer is no. This form is specifically for folks who volunteered in 2023 and continued volunteering during 2024. We want individuals who, have continued their volunteerism, who were not just added to the roster in 2024 to be reported on this form. Sections 1 and Section 3 are identical to the previous form that we noted. And so Section 1 reflects the department's name, 5-digit para-issued VFD number, and county of jurisdiction. Section 2 is where you will list your returning 2024 members, including their full 9-digit Social Security number, legal name, address, and date of birth. You will also check off the applicable yes or no for service credit eligibility, and then the chief or their designee needs to sign, list their title and date that form. If you have more than 10 returning volunteers, you absolutely want to use additional pages for this section. Now, I will hound on this more often than not. We need verified Social Security numbers on each of these forms. Without fail, we have departments who get the Social Security numbers wrong. Sometimes it's just transposed numbers, but sometimes we get these reports in and the Social Security number actually belongs to an entirely different human. So it's why we ask you to collect driver's license and Social Security cards when you onboard a new volunteer, so you have something to reference for future reporting seasons. Next item for discussion is our service credit qualification for reporting retired members. Section 1 will include, as we discussed, your department name, 5-digit para VFD number, and the county that your entity resides in. You're going to list each retired member, and so the way that para classifies that definition is somebody who has applied for and is receiving their volunteer fire benefits for having satisfied a minimum of 10 years of volunteerism or up to 25 or more years and has attained 55 years of age. And so if those individuals are drawing their pension from para, they also have the ability to continue volunteering. Since para requires departments to report 100% of their roster, it is imperative that you list your retirees on this form, including their social, legal name, date of birth, and mailing address, and whether or not they met service credit eligibility. Even though volunteers can't accrue additional service credits, if an opportunity exists in the future to, adjust service credit, there may be an opportunity to discuss with volunteers who are already drawing the ability to accrue additional years of service credit. Section 3 will require the chief or the chief's designee's signature, title, and date. All right, so this is brand new for the 2025 reporting season. if you have volunteers in 2024 who are not interested in accruing volunteer fire benefits under PARA's umbrella, this brand new form will allow those individuals to exclude themselves from VF membership. Section 1 still calls for the department's name, 5-digit BFD number, and the county of jurisdiction. In Section 2, you will list each excluded volunteer's last four of social, legal name, date of birth, and then the last column in this lovely form is asking you, did this individual complete and submit an exclusion form from VF membership? And so we're going to cover that form in just a second. But if you are checking no, it is imperative that that form be completed and remitted to PARA. Since this is brand new for 2024, it should be a yes, and you include that exclusion form in your packet. The chief will then, or the chief or the chief's designee will then sign, list their title, and include the date that the report is being completed. The exclusion form in Section 2 very specifically notes that the volunteer may be eligible for VF service credit and a future benefit from PARA, and that they are waiving their right to their benefit. The exclusion can be revoked at any time by completing a member enrollment for VF benefits, but any time that is excluded via this form cannot be reclaimed in the future once that exclusion is revoked. The member should complete sections 1 and then sign and date section 2. The chief or the chief's designee needs to complete section 3, including the VFD start date. So we want to make sure that that is clear. If you have any questions about the form, we'll share our contact information at the end so you can reach out to us. All right, so for the last bit of paper reporting, we need your department to complete the annual reporting form. Section 1 is really straightforward. We're not asking you any questions you don't know the answer to. If you are a brand new chief and you're not sure what your 5-digit VFD number is, please reach out to us. We'll help you track that information down. Please don't make it up. We had a discussion earlier this month with a department that was actually using the wrong number, and then all of their reports were not posting because of that error. So don't make up the number. If you have questions, please reach out to us. In section 2, you are going to tally all of your service credit qualification and exclusion forms, and you are going to list by section, new members. You're going to give us a total on, in section 2 on line 1, how many new members you are entering. If the answer is 0, you don't have to give us the service credit qualification form, just indicate 0 on that line. For your returning members, you are going to list that number in line 2. For line 3, any retired VFD members you listed on that service credit qualification form will go on line 3. For any members who were excluded, any individuals who've included their exclusion form, that information will go on line 4. And then you can take out your favorite smartphone with the calculator, pen and pencil, and then add up all of lines 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then you're going to list the total on line 5. My hope is for next reporting season, I can convince Adobe to add those for us, but for the time being, we need you to list those sections individually and add them up. In section 3, the chief needs to list their legal name, printed out legibly, the department number or the department name, and then sign and date the form in the presence of a notary. This is the chief affirming that 100% of their roster is being reported to PARA via these forms. Once everything is complete, signed, notarized, dated, the chief needs to obtain the signature from the mayor who has jurisdiction over your entity, or the chair of the county commission, and they need to sign and date the form, right? So once that entire packet is complete, you should make a copy for your department records, and then you need to return that information to PARA. If you are a snail mail human, make sure you are sending that information with some sort of delivery or signature confirmation, because if it gets lost in the mail and doesn't reach us by the statutory reporting deadline, your report may not be accepted. You do have the option, courtesy of the pandemic, to remit these forms to PARA via email at para-memberservices@state.nm.us. That information is included in the instructions at the top of the form. And yes, we know the form requires notarization, but since the pandemic, we've accepted them that way. So make sure all of the pages of your service credit qualifications, any exclusion forms, new member enrollment forms, social security cards, driver's licenses are included in your packet. A little word to the wise. For those of you that are new to this process, PARA strongly recommends that you capture those new member enrollment forms, driver's license, social security cards each month when you are adding new members to your rosters, and turn them in the month that you've collected them, so that when annual reporting rolls around, all you have to worry about are these forms instead of trying to track down the members to fill out these member enrollment forms and bring their driver's licenses and social security cards. So that's our hot tip for today. All right, we are moving on to the electronic reporting process. For the electronic reporting process to be established, PARA will need the department chief to actually complete and submit a VFD contact information form, which is what you see here on the right side of your screen. You, as the chief, can be entirely responsible for the paper and electronic reporting process. If that is the way you want to go, you will list your information in section 2 and again in section 3. However, if you would like to delegate the electronic reporting process to an individual who loves to work with computers, you can list that individual's name, daytime phone number, and email address, and PARA will grant them online reporting credentials so that your paper report can be entered electronically, which is also required by PARA in order for your annual reporting process to be complete. Once we receive this completed form and it's signed off on by the chief and dated, you can return it to PARA via fax, via email, via snail mail. But the sooner it gets to us, the sooner your department can begin the reporting process. Once we've entered the form, the reporting person, whether it's the chief or someone else that they've designated, that individual is going to receive a series of emails, most of which are generated automatically by the system. And so the person should be prepared for that. They all come from para-rio helpdesk at state.nm.us. I strongly recommend to those who are going to be responsible for employer reporting through the website to use copy and paste to transfer any temporary password from the email to the login screen. Staff will also send an email that says, here is your user ID. Here is the link to the reporting portal. Here is a link to the guide that will help you through the electronic and technically paper reporting process. So just to keep that in mind. Once you get to the electronic reporting portal, either via the email we've sent to the reporting person or by visiting nmpara.org and clicking on the yellow Rio login button at the top of the page, the person who is accessing the portal will be redirected to our Rio self-service site. The individual will then click on the login button at the top bar, and then will be prompted for the user ID that we provide in our email and the temporary password that is sent by the para-rio help desk email address. And so this is where copy and paste will be very helpful for the temporary password because it generally contains letters and numbers that look pretty similar, and you don't want to get frustrated or locked out. Another hot tip is once we send you that temporary password, it is only valid for 48 hours. So we strongly recommend logging in. And then once you do that and you click agree on the terms and conditions page, the next screen that populates will prompt you to set a new password that is easier to remember than the crazy temporary password that we've sent to you. So if you can't do anything else in the electronic reporting portal, you should definitely do this in the first 48 hours. You can come back to the electronic reporting process anytime prior to the statutory deadline, but this will definitely help you not be locked out of the system. And so when you reset your password, the prompt at the top of that new password page tells you that your password has to be a minimum of 8 characters long. It recommends letters, numbers, and a symbol. So just keep that in mind. Passwords and user IDs should never be shared between individuals. And so it's imperative that anyone who needs access to the portal has their own login credentials, because if somebody does something that is not not appropriate is what I'm going to say. You want to make sure your user ID is not tied to that. So make sure your reporting person and the chief, if those are different, request the appropriate login credentials. When you send us those contact info sheets, if you want credentials set up for both the chief and for the reporting person, please indicate that on the form. All right, so once you are logged in as the reporting person or the chief or whoever's going to handle that, the reporting guide that we're going to send to you in that email is going to walk you step by step through the reporting screens. Essentially, everything that you need to do will be on the Work on Reports page. Once you get there, you are going to create a new report. I call this step essentially creating your report shell. And so once you click on the Create a New Report button that's down in the second screenshot on this slide, it will redirect you to the report creation form. Your start date should be January 1st of the reporting year. For the purposes of our recording today, that'll be January 1st, 2024. Your end date for this report shell will be December 31st of 2024. When you come back to report 2025 and 2026, it'll read 1/1 of 2025 through December 31 of 2025. The important step on this screen is to click the last radio button, which is the method for populating. It should always read create a report with no member records. For those of you who have done this years and years, you're probably wondering why we don't get to use the other options. That the other two options were essentially established for our departments, not even departments, for our paid reporters who are paying individuals on a biweekly basis because our system is smart enough to pull things from 2 weeks ago. They are not set up to pull things from a year ago. And so you have to create your report from scratch every reporting season, which is what that last radio button allows you to do. Once you've populated the dates, clicked on the appropriate radio button and click next, the system is going to kick you back out to the Work on Reports page. In the regular reports section, you are going to see the report shell you just created. Once you do that and you click on the word edit, it is going to take you to a screen that allows you to add those 9-digit social security numbers you've marked on your paper report. So you're going to start one social at a time. You're going to type in the full 9-digit social security number. And once you do that and click add, it is going to take you to a new screen where you get to add that new member record. Once you click on add new record, the system is going to populate this screen. If the screen is entirely blank, you have to fill in the date of birth, name, address, zip code, city, state, zip, all of the information on the left side of the screen. However, if you've turned in your member enrollment forms to Para and we've processed them before you start this process, that information should automatically populate. If you know you're entering somebody who was a volunteer in 2023 who continued to volunteer in 2024 and you've typed in a social and the whole left side is blank, there's a really fine chance you're using a bad social security number, because if you reported them in 23 and you're continuing to report them in 2024, this information should be populated from our system from the previous reporting. And so that would be one of the clues. If you're dealing with the new member records on your new member service credit qualification form and you haven't given us their member enrollment form, social security cards, driver's licenses, this information is probably going to be blank, which is what you're going to pull from your paper report after you verified social, date of birth, so on and so forth. So that covers the left side of the screen. On the right side of the screen, it is imperative that you touch nothing other than the last field, which is service to be awarded. You are going to click yes if you check the paper report on the yes column. You're going to leave it in the default no if you checked no on the paper report. No other fields on the right side of the screen should be touched under any circumstances. If you are trying to modify status code, separation region, exclusion region, or status date, your report is going to be very angry. And then when we figure out why your report is angry, we're going to pick up the phone and probably have a chat with you about not touching those fields. Please do not touch them under any circumstances because they are not to be touched. If I could pay our programmers to completely gray them out for you, I absolutely would. Do not touch them. Yes or no are the only things you should be touching on the right side of the screen. Once you click on save, if you have more members to add, the system takes you back to those first steps a few slides ago where you punch in the social, you click add, and then you go through the steps all the way through. You should only be reporting your brand new members and your current returning members in the electronic reporting season. Retired and excluded members do not get reported to Para in this portal. They only get reported on paper. All right, so once all of your active, current, returning, and new VFD members have been entered into the system, you're going to return to the Work on Reports tab on the left side menu. And then in your regular reports window, you are going to see your report there, and you'll be able to see that your report is in unconfirmed status. Now, if you are not sure, maybe you got pulled away, maybe you didn't get to finish entering the report before you had to go to an emergency call or tend to other matters. If you're not sure where you left off with your paper reporting entry, you can click on View Totals at the end of that line, and it'll show you everyone that you entered. If you want to double check that your paper report matches your electronic report, View Totals can absolutely be your best friend. Once you click on the Unconfirmed button, the system will tell you that the report has been confirmed, and if everything in the report looks good, the system will do its magic that night and potentially post your report. Now, if you get called away, or perhaps you start the electronic reporting process a little bit later in the day, another note that I have for you is our system shuts down for nightly batch roughly at 8 p.m. every evening. And so if you're in the middle of entering your report at 7:59 and the system kicks you out at 8, there is a rough chance that the batch overnight might post your partial report. My hope is that if you haven't clicked unconfirmed yet, the system should leave it alone. If you've clicked confirmed and then you wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night and realize you left someone off, there is a way to add them to the report later on. If that occurs, just reach out to us. We can help you through that. But until you click the unconfirmed button, the system shouldn't try to post anything. If you're sure your report looks good, you confirmed in the view totals screen, you've clicked the unconfirmed button so the system confirms your report. The next step is you are going to want to come back down in the work on reports screen and confirm that your report does not have any errors. Now, how do we do that? First, you're going to click on the validate option in option 3 on this lovely page. If your report has issues, section or option 2 of this lovely screen will show you which members are holding up your electronic reporting. If any members populate in option 2, you need to look at each of those individual suspended records and determine what is needed to fix them. We have a Q&A at the end that we're going to cover the most common types of suspended records and the most popular methods for correcting those errors. But essentially, if you have information populated in option 2 and you click on select one record at a time, it'll actually give you an error message and tell you what's wrong with that member's record. And so if you have any questions, please reach out. Now, on to the frequently asked questions. In that suspended member record section, once you click on select, if you find a message at the top that says this SSN does not exist, the person must be new, this is where we need the member enrollment form, driver's license, and social security card in our hot little hands so our records division can open up their file on our side and tie them to your volunteer fire department. This is the only way around that. Please do not try to force anything into the database by monkeying with those fields I begged you to leave alone. If the error message says that person doesn't have any employment or position for the date range, that means one of two things. Either we don't have their member enrollment form, or they may have been tied to a different volunteer fire department in the past, and now they're tied to yours. That means we still need their member enrollment form, driver's license, social security card. If you're absolutely sure those items have reached para, please reach out to us. Sometimes our system is kind of fickle and it closes out someone's tie in the employment and position screens um, without our permission. And so all we need to do on our end is open that back up, and then that will help your records unsuspend. If you get the third error message, the last line is your clue that this person is drawing a VF pension from para. If you reported them on your current returning or new member forms, and you weren't aware that they were drawing a VF pension, just draw a little asterisk on the paper form and indicate you were unaware that the person was drawing a VF pension. But in 2026, when you're reporting 2025, make sure you're reporting them on the retired service credit qualification form. The way to remedy this in the electronic system is to delete that member's record from the system. If you're not comfortable doing that, please reach out to us. We're happy to make that modification from our end. But as we discussed on previous slides, volunteers who are drawing a VF pension only get reported on paper. If you get the last error message that says a transaction could not be validated due to the account being under construction, that's something only para can fix. It means someone on our staff is working on that member's file. It may be related to their VF service, but more often than not, it's tied to a paid member's side of the screen. And so if someone's working on it, they essentially put everything in the file on hold. We'll ask the staff to release that so we can get your report posted. If you see any other error messages, please let us know. We're happy to help you troubleshoot those. But essentially, these are the most common, and most of the fixes are tied to missing paperwork, driver's license, social security cards. Now, most common question we get from volunteer fire chiefs is what happens if this person is no longer volunteering and we can't reach them? The unfortunate answer for you is we still need their member enrollment form. We need section 1 with as much demographic information as you are able to obtain from your files to be listed in section 1. Obviously, if you're not sure if they're married, if you haven't captured any of that information, section 2 can remain blank. In section 3, you will indicate on the signature line that the person was not available for signature, but the entirety of section 4 has to be completed. Once we get that form in our hot little hands, we'll do everything in our power to help you unsuspend your report. Next most popular question, I'm brand new to this role. What if our previous chief hasn't reported us in 1 or more years? The answer is the current statute allows volunteer fire members to reclaim or correct missing or misreported service credit for the previous 2 reporting seasons. So right now in 2025, we are reporting 2024 service credit. That means 2023 and 2022 are open for adjustment. Once we're done working through these slides, and we only have a few left, we're going to take a field trip out to Para's website and we'll look at that specific form. But it means that each member on the roster for 2022 and 2023 has to complete an individual adjustment form and submit it to Para for consideration of being awarded that missing or misreported service credit. Unfortunately, this last question on this slide has come up more times this year than I've ever seen it in the past. What if you have a volunteer who passed away during 2024? Please report the member specifically on paper. If you try to report them electronically, there's a fine chance our system is going to give you some message related to a death notification. And so if you are in contact with the volunteer's family, Para will need their death documentation, a death certificate. Unfortunately, there are no pre-retirement benefits or pre-death retirement benefits tied to the volunteer fire program. And so essentially you'll just report them in their last year. You can indicate on the paper that the person passed away and give us their date of death, and we'll make that note in our system. So we are sorry for every department who has lost a volunteer. It actually breaks our heart when folks pass away before they retire. All right. Next common question, do I have to list every single member, all the returning current members every year? And the answer is yes. It is why I went painstakingly through section 2 of the annual reporting form. 100% of your roster needs to be reported to us every single year. And the next question is sort of tied to that. We once had a chief say, well, I don't report anyone because no one made service credit eligibility. Even if folks were no on your entire roster, we still need that paper report and electronic reporting. Why is that? If they come to us later, those volunteers, and they say that chief hated me, and they submit an adjustment, we have nothing to check that adjustment request against if we don't receive it, right? So if you don't do the electronic and paper reporting for everyone who is a no, and everyone who is a yes, and we get an adjustment form, we're going to take what the individual tells us for face value. But if we have that paper and electronic reporting forms in our system and you've marked no, when they come to us and say, I should have been a yes, we're going to turn around and ask them for the sign-in sheets to all the meetings they attended in that year. We're going to ask them for all their training records. We're going to ask them for proof that they attended emergency responses. And I know the state fire marshal's office said the biggest hurdle they're having now when they go out and audit is trying to verify the emergency responses. But I think they're coming up with a master plan for that. So, para may ask them for documentation if they're requesting an adjustment for a previous report that doesn't match. So please turn in all of your reports, every person on your roster every year. Now, these forms are absolutely important, which means please do not use correction tape fluid. Do your best not to strike through any information, because when we get those reports in our hot little hands, if they have signatures on them and somebody's gone back and crossed off a bunch of people, we're going to question that, right? Like, why were they on there at the time of signature? And now that you're turning it in, you're crossing them off. We want everything to be on the up and up, 100% of your roster. Certainly, from the outreach team. It's technically myself, Christina Gauthier, Bureau Chief, Vicki Chavez, and Liz Sandoval, whose names might ring a bell for you. They are our public relations coordinators. They have taken to heart the VF reporting season and likely have reached out to you if your department is behind on annual reporting or have suspended records. And so our team is dedicated to making sure you and your volunteers get the service credit that you are due. We know you are volunteers, and the time and dedication and attention you are putting to this task is super important. Please know we appreciate you. As a reminder, statutory deadline for paper and electronic reporting is Monday, March 31st, 2025, before 11:59 p.m. There will be 0 exceptions. If you wait until the last day and you can't get your signatures from the appropriate mayor, chair of county commission, that is on you. You need to start this process sooner than that. You need to start tracking down members' enrollment forms, driver's license, social security cards. The sooner you turn it in, the better. We actually had, I think, somewhere between 3 and 5 departments complete their annual reporting the first week of January, which is when the reporting season opened. And so kudos to them. They don't have para harassing them about annual reporting. So please be on top of this. Please thank your volunteers by giving them the respect the reporting season is due. All right, so we're here to help. We want every department to succeed and be up to date in reporting and be in full compliance with the rules and regs. If you have questions, we're based out of the Albuquerque office, but you don't have to drive from all over the state. You can send an email to Paradash Member Services or Paradash Albuquerque. That reaches myself, Vicki, and Liz. If you say, I'm not good with computers, still send us an email and say, please give me a call. If you want to try calling, the toll-free number at the bottom of the screen, when our call center answers, you can say, can I speak to someone in outreach about volunteer fire? They will absolutely transfer you probably to all 3 of us, but just keep in mind, this isn't our only role. We serve all, nearly 100,000 members of PARA and travel the state. We have other roles that we handle for the agency, and so email is certainly the best way to reach us. If you call and leave a voicemail, we'll do our best to get back to you as quickly as possible, but I feel like we live out of the car, so email is definitely the best way to reach us. There is a paper guide for those of you who maybe thought, oh gosh, she spoke so quickly. How am I going to get all of that down? It's part of the reason we're recording today's presentation. But certainly for those of you who are paper learners, I love reading a good book. This guide will take you step by step through the process. You have this video to fall back on. But if you need help, as a department, we're happy to do that. We can schedule a call and walk you through entering the first few people into your report in terms of the electronic process. Let's see, other fun things. I can't think. Um, I mean this with the utmost respect. If you are reaching out to Para and you're asking us who is on your roster, it gives me pause because if you're the chief, shouldn't you know who's on your roster? If you are brand new to the department and you're not sure who is reported in 2023, we may have a way to work around that. Keep in mind, we cannot release members' full social security numbers back to a department. So you should be keeping records of all of your members in your files. But if you are not sure who got reported in 23, you're brand new to the process, please reach out to us. If you've been doing this a long time and you're asking me who was on last year's roster, I'm going to be less excited about having to remind you of who was on that roster because I get the impression that maybe we're not keeping valid records on the department end. So we're here to help. We just want accurate records. State Fire Marshal's office is doing a bunch of spot audits. And so anyone reported on paper and electronically, State Fire Marshal's office is going around and verifying that information. So keep good records. That's all I got. All right, so that is everything I have on the slide deck. We're going to take a quick um, field trip out to Para's website, presuming my screen is nice and decides to let me do that. And so let's see, we're going to go over here to Para's website. Perfect. As soon as my screen stops being mean to me. So on Para's website, for those of you who have reported to Para annual reporting in the past, we've directed you to our For Members tab and then volunteer fire retirement. Following an audit of our website, our auditors suggested that since this is technically an employer reporting process, that we actually move volunteer firefighting reporting to our For Employers tab. So the red or pinkish line above For Employers, when you hover over that, is going to show you the volunteer firefighter annual reporting guidance. Once you click there, you will see the last session that we have open for a live version of this presentation that is scheduled for March 12th, 2025. When you get to this page, you can pre-register by clicking on the link, but all of the forms and the guide that we talked about today can be found at the bottom of this page. So all the member enrollment forms, BFD contact forms, each of those service credit qualification, exclusion, annual reporting forms. The guide that is referenced for annual reporting can also be found on this page. What I would like to focus on for just a second is the adjusted qualification report. So for an individual who maybe didn't get reported in 2022 or 2023, or they're trying to correct a misreported amount of service credits, the individual will complete sections 1 and section 2. And then in section 3, they will check yes or no for the applicable service credit. That individual needs to sign and date the form in the presence of a notary and then obtain the signature from the mayor or the chair of the county commission. And then the form gets returned to Para via our Para member services, fax, email, snail mail, hand delivery works too. We just need that form back so that we can assess and award any missing or misreported service credit. So that is the form to help those departments who are out of sync with reporting for the past few years. Adjusting periods that are missing prior to 2021 will require legislative action. I'm not entirely sure if the 2025 legislative session will include any adjustment periods. I did joke with the State Fire Marshal, Randy Varela, that if they opened a new period of adjustment that I would likely retire. But I do want all of our department members to get the service credit they'll due, or they are all due. So it might have been an empty threat. Let's just go with that. And so if they open up a new adjustment period, Para will communicate that to our members, so they can claim anything prior to 22 and 23. December 31st of 2025 will be the last day that 2022 service credit can be requested. Once that window closes, only 23 and 24 will be available for adjustment in 2026. So it's imperative that anyone who is missing that service credit get on that paperwork quickly. If anyone has any questions for us, by all means, please feel free to reach out. I can't think of anything else that could potentially be helpful. But I will end the presentation today with, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Before you make a trip to our office, please reach out to double check our schedule. We tend to live in the vehicle out on the road. So cold calling, not cold calling per se, but dropping into the office and expecting to see someone pans out sometimes, but it doesn't pan out always. So touch base first. If we need to set an appointment to meet in the office, we're happy to do that as well. If you're closer to Santa Fe, we can meet you up north. Just let us know. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for your service to our communities. Let us know if you have any questions about the reporting process. And thank you so much. Take care.